from South Africa and Zimbabwe, is that right?
That's correct, Gerard. I was born in Zimbabwe, grew up there, did my schooling, trained in construction management in Zimbabwe. After my completion of construction management, I moved to South Africa, spent 8 years there in a number of areas, in Johannesburg, Pretoria area for a predominant time of that, and then Pietermaritzburg. I then moved back to Zimbabwe, where I had an opportunity to buy into a construction company, landed up buying the company outright and spent a good few years there before things collapsed in Zimbabwe economically. Moved on and decided that this was not going to be a place to continue doing business, and we then made the decision for the future of our children to move to Australia. I had a construction company. I'd call it a medium-sized construction company, a staff of about 150 people, which is considered a medium-sized construction company in Zimbabwe. Zimbabwe's construction industry is very labour-intensive, slightly different even to South Africa, that is not as mechanized. So we had a large contingent of staff, and when I moved to Australia, what I was predominantly looking for was something similarly related, in the line of contracting, so that it would tie up with what I knew, what I understood. So I had been involved in management of contracting. Coming to Australia, I was looking at a broad scope of industry that I felt my skill level would be suited to. That would be project management, construction management, anything in that line, subcontracting of various industries. I had a lot of looks at kitchen companies that were manufacturing kitchen units and joinery for various industries, right from commercial to domestic. So I looked through a big line related similarly to what I was skilled at.
Okay, so you had the business acumen, you had experience in managing people, you understood how people worked, and you wanted to apply all of that in Australia, but you ended up buying a different business. You want to tell us about that?
Yes, Gerard. What I did is I spent at least 6 months looking for a business. I went through a number of different business brokers to get to that point. In the beginning, didn't have too much success there, and it only took a while before I did find a business broker that was carrying quality businesses, and I think that is a very valid and important point. There's a lot of businesses for sale. You can find anything in Australia, and I looked at a number that looked lucrative, looked workable, but until I found a business broker that really would only handle quality businesses, that was the point that I felt I was getting somewhere. And he didn't have a lot of businesses on his books, but there was a good reason for that, because those businesses were quality businesses. So yeah, that I think is.
What do you mean a quality business broker? He was different to the others in what way?
In the way that he wouldn't take businesses that were not profitable. There is a number of ways of valuing businesses, and I think that's something that needs to be really, really understood and learned. It took me a while to learn it, and through the coaching of a good accountant, that again we got through a referral, and the accountant can school you in how you can look at a business. This is even before you get to the point of doing a due diligence. You need to have an understanding of how the business is valued, where your valuation comes in, and the way that it is valued, it can vary between the way that expenses are put into the business, whether they're personal expenses. If it's personal expenses, it can be excluded out of the business, and yet in a number of cases those are integral to a business. So what a director earns, what an owner earns, what his wife earns, what they use on mobile telephones, if it's classed as personal, they can exclude it out of the costings of the business. So the business can look really profitable, but there could be 3 owners there, all with salaries, and they are integral to that business. when you put that real value back into it, there's no value at all.
So you got to understand the business environment very well, and you do that by virtue of having good advisors. You have a good accountant schooling you in ways to look at the business in Australia, which might be different to South Africa, because you had experience in South Africa and Zimbabwe, good experience, and you had a good business broker, and that basically built you a team of expert eyes to look at every opportunity. But you still took some time before you got to the right business.
Yes, that's correct, Gerard. And when I say getting good accountant, ours came through a referral, and I think one of the biggest pieces of advice to anybody who's looking for a business is to take advice from people who have walked the same path. And it's easier said than done, because you can come from a very successful background in another country, be it South Africa, be it the UK, but things that are done very differently in your new country, as I think somebody moving from the UK to Zimbabwe or South Africa would find. But coming to this country, you need to speak and take the advice, and sometimes that advice might be strange advice. But I do believe that is an important factor, and I think that's something that we were willing to do, is to listen to the advice of what others had for us. We got to meet some people just by asking around, ex-Zimbabweans who had been in this country for 11 or 12 years, and not just one, a couple of different people. Some Brisbane based, some Sunshine Coast based, and a couple of people up north, Harvey Bay area. And they have all been here successfully operating in business, but have been through the mill and have had to work at it and go the hard road. They understand and know business, and I took their advice. And one of the first pieces of advice that I was given is get a good accountant. I was